I want to be very clear. You have misused resources appropriated by Congress. You've engaged in unethical behavior. You have repeatedly made false and misleading statements to Congress and to the press, and you've undermined the separation of powers and disregarded the role of Congress and the courts. Bottom line, you lie with impunity, you reject checks and balances, and you ignore Congress and the courts. Your options are limited. Either you're going to resign, Trump's going to fire you, or you will be impeached. I've already called for your resignation. You may remember I hand-delivered my request to you back in May, and I urge you to reconsider resignation because I've taken the first step towards your impeachment, and I've called on the
Stop for a moment and pay attention. What you just saw, a member of Congress delivering that kind of ultimatum, isn't just a passing moment. It could be the beginning of something far more serious and impactful than many people realize. Before going any further, it's important to clarify something. Some videos circulating online show dramatic scenes of Jack Smith entering a courtroom, presenting shocking evidence, and a judge immediately convicting Donald Trump. Those scenes are not real. They are dramatized versions created to capture attention and boost engagement. No such instant courtroom decision has happened in reality. I'm making that clear up front because accuracy matters more than sensationalism. However, the reason these videos are spreading so widely and why millions are watching and sharing them says something deeper about public perception and growing tension around the situation.
An investigation into your lawlessness. Mr. Chairman, I know that at the end we'll be entering a number of articles into consent, but since I have a few moments, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter calling the Judiciary Committee to investigate Secretary Noem's impeachable offenses. Whatever you choose, the American people will have justice, Secretary, and you will be held accountable. I'm going to make sure of that every single day.
The reason so many dramatic videos about this situation have gained traction online is not just because they are sensational, but because they are rooted in something real. Even when those clips exaggerate events or present fictional courtroom scenes, they are often built around a foundation of actual claims, evidence, and public statements. In many cases, the truth behind the story is already compelling enough that it doesn't require much embellishment to capture attention. At the center of this discussion is Special Counsel Jack Smith, who was tasked with overseeing federal investigations involving former President Donald Trump. It was detailed, extensive, and designed to meet the highest legal standard, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That standard is the same one required to secure a criminal conviction in a court of law, and reaching it requires far more than suspicion or circumstantial connections. What makes the situation particularly significant is the type of evidence reportedly collected. Instead of relying primarily on indirect clues, investigators gathered what is often described as direct evidence to planes up. This includes audio recordings, video footage, emails, text messages, and sworn testimony from witnesses who were directly involved in or present during key events. These are the kinds of materials that can carry substantial weight in legal proceedings because they show actions and statements firsthand rather than asking a jury to infer them. One of the most frequently discussed pieces of evidence is an audio recording from July 2021 reportedly made at Trump's Bedminster property in New Jersey. According to public reporting and legal analysis, the recording captures Trump discussing a document related to military planning involving Iran. The individuals present at the time were not authorized to access classified information, which raises immediate legal concerns. Even more notable is the claim that Trump acknowledged in his own words that the document remained classified and that he did not have the authority to declassify it simply by thinking about it. This detail is important because it directly relates to a key public defense that had been presented, that certain documents were automatically declassified. If a recording shows acknowledgement to the contrary, it could undermine that defense in a very direct way. Legal experts often emphasize that recorded statements from a defendant can be among the most powerful forms of evidence because they are difficult to reinterpret or dismiss. However, the Bedminster recording is only one part of a much broader evidentiary picture. Another focus of the investigation involved the handling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private residence and club in Florida. According to reports, surveillance footage from the property shows boxes being moved at specific times, particularly during periods when federal authorities were requesting the return of government material. The timing of these movements has been highlighted as significant. Investigators reportedly found that the relocation of boxes occurred in close proximity to official requests for their return. They received regarding those boxes. These accounts allegedly included details about how materials were handled and where they were moved. Physical evidence also played a role. Documents recovered from the property reportedly included classification markings indicating that they contained sensitive national security information. The presence of such materials in a private setting accessible to numerous individuals, including guests and staff, became a central concern in the investigation. When viewed together, these elements form what prosecutors often aim for, in complex cases, a combination of different types of evidence that support and reinforce each other. Video footage provides a visual record, witness testimony, adds context, and physical documents establish the nature of the materials involved. This layered approach can make a case more difficult to challenge because it does not rely on a single point of proof. Beyond the documents case, another major component of the investigation focused on efforts to challenge the results of the 2020 presidential election. According to the findings described by investigators, this went beyond typical legal challenges or recount efforts. Instead, it was characterized as a coordinated strategy involving multiple actions aimed at overturning the outcome. One key issue in this area is intent. Prosecutors generally need to show not only what actions were taken, but also what the individual understood at the time, according to accounts of the investigation. Trump was informed by advisors, legal experts, and government officials that claims of widespread election fraud were not supported by evidence sufficient to change the result. Despite these warnings, the investigation alleges that efforts continued to pursue alternative means of remaining in power. These efforts reportedly included attempts to influence state officials as well as pressure directed toward then Vice President Mike Pence regarding the certification of electoral votes. Testimony from individuals present during these discussions was said to provide detailed descriptions of what occurred. In addition, written communications such as emails, memos, and planning documents were cited as evidence of how certain strategies were developed and executed. A particularly important aspect of this portion of the case involves the concept of fake electors, which refers to attempts to submit alternative slates of electors from certain states. According to investigators, this was not a spontaneous or isolated effort, but rather part of a broader plan that involved coordination at multiple levels. Legal analysts often emphasize the difference between circumstantial and direct evidence. When evaluating cases like this, circumstantial evidence requires interpretation. It asks jurors to connect pieces of information and draw conclusions. Direct evidence, on the other hand, presents the act or statement itself, such as a recording. In this investigation, the claim is that a significant amount of direct evidence was gathered, which can make a case more straightforward to present in court. Despite the reported strength of the evidence, no federal trial has taken place on these matters. The primary reason cited is a long-standing policy within the Department of Justice that a sitting president cannot be prosecuted. When Trump returned to office following the 2024 election, this policy effectively paused the legal proceedings. It is crucial to understand what this means and what it does not mean. The halt in prosecution was not the result of a court finding that the evidence was insufficient. Nor was it a declaration of innocence. Instead, it was a procedural outcome based on institutional rules governing how the justice system interacts with the presidency. This distinction has been emphasized by legal experts and by Smith himself in public statements. The investigation was not closed because the evidence disappeared or lost credibility. It was paused because of the position held by the individual involved. As a result, the materials collected during the investigation remain intact. Some commentators have described the situation as leaving behind a trial-ready case. The idea is that the most difficult and time-consuming aspects of building a prosecution, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and developing legal arguments, have already been completed. If circumstances change in the future, those materials could potentially be used without starting from scratch. Another plot point: evidence does not expire simply because time passes. Recordings remain recordings, documents remain documents, and sworn testimony remains part of the official record. These materials are preserved within government systems and can be revisited if legal conditions allow. This leads to a broader issue that is often misunderstood in public discussion: the difference between a case being halted and a case being resolved. In this instance, there has been no trial, no verdict, and no formal determination of guilt or innocence. The legal process was interrupted before reaching that stage. Historically, the United States has encountered similar situations involving high-ranking officials. During the Watergate scandal, audio recordings played a decisive role in shaping the outcome for President Richard Nixon, ultimately leading to his resignation. In the case of President Bill Clinton, impeachment proceedings moved forward, but the Senate did not convict. Each of these cases highlights the complex relationship between evidence, law, and politics. They also demonstrate that outcomes can vary widely depending on timing, institutional rules, and broader political dynamics. In the current situation, the key question is not whether evidence exists, but what will eventually happen with it. The investigation has already produced a substantial body of material. The next steps depend on factors that extend beyond the evidence itself, including legal interpretations and future decisions by those in positions of authority. For now, one clear takeaway is that while some online portrayals exaggerate events, they are often grounded in real developments. The recordings, documents, and testimony discussed in these contexts are not purely fictional, They represent claims and findings that have been documented and preserved. Ultimately, this situation reflects an ongoing process rather than a concluded story. The evidence has been gathered, the arguments have been outlined, and the legal questions remain unresolved. What happens next will shape not only the outcome of this particular case, but also broader discussions about accountability, the rule of law, and the limits of presidential power in the United States. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to share it with others, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more clear, fact-based updates.